Hola, Alex here with a new video, and I'm super excited for this one today because we are taking a look at two legendary Leica lenses. We're taking a look at Leica's most recent 50mm f1.4 Summilux Reissue. I really like this lens. I'll actually post up a link to the review of that lens somewhere up here. But we're going to be comparing it with a very special lens, the 50mm f1.2 Noctilux Reissue. I've been wanting to try this lens for so long, and I finally got my hands on it thanks to today's sponsor, Owl Crown. More on them later, but they loaned me a copy of this lens to make this video possible. Unlike traditional comparison videos, I'm not going to declare a winner because this is not a versus battle. We're just going to look at the rendering and the differences between these two classic and I would say legendary lenses. For today's video, we're going to look at build quality, we're going to compare the similarities, the differences, and then we're going to take a look at image quality and see how these lenses render. Afterwards, we'll kind of recap our thoughts and we'll take it from there. So let's go right into build quality, and we will start off with the new 50 Summilux f1.4 reissue. So taking a look at the Summilux Reissue, this lens currently retails for $4,170. This lens has 12 aperture blades. It weighs in at 417 grams. So this lens is actually extremely heavy. It doesn't look like it, but it is. And Leica says this lens is based on the optical formula of the 1959 Summilux 1.4. Now they have made some changes because back then this lens focused up to 1 meter or as close as 1 meter. And this new lens now focuses up to 0.7 meters. So they have improved the focusing distance. But outside of that, you have the same optical formula and build quality, which means this lens is made out of brass. And like I mentioned, because of that, it is extremely heavy. Now, taking a look at the Noctilux, this lens actually retails for $8,555, essentially almost double the Summilux lens. This lens actually has 16 aperture blades. I don't even know if any modern lenses today have 16 aperture blades. That is a huge amount of aperture blades. It's also made out of brass. This one actually weighs in a little less at 405 grams. So this is a 1.2 and it weighs less than the 1.4 Summilux. So that goes to tell you how heavy the Summilux is. And this lens is based on the 1966 1.2 formula. So both these lenses are within a decade apart. So taking a look at some of the similarities of these lenses, they're both made out of brass and they both share a similar design language, which means they also both have a long focusing throw. I personally prefer this because a 50mm lens is more of a portrait lens, and the longer the focus throw it is, the easier it is to nail focus. Now you're sacrificing speed for accuracy, but I prefer accuracy in this case, and both these lenses are a joy to focus on. But here's where some of the differences start. So the Summilux has a close focusing distance of 0.7 meters, and the Noctilux has a close focusing distance of 1 meter. That's a pretty big difference. Now, both these lenses also come in different colors. So the Summilux only comes in silver, and the Noctilux comes in black, and they just recently released a new black paint edition. So those are the differences. Oh, and I forgot to mention the astronomical price difference. The Noctilux is double the price, but I think I mentioned that earlier. Physically though, both lenses look very similar and they both look great on an M body. But let's get to the image quality and take a look at some photos and see the rendering difference between these two lenses. So I'm going to open up my laptop and let's take a look at some images. So before we deep dive, a few ground rules. All the photos you're going to see have been edited with my presets. They were all shot using the exact same settings, and I shot the photos at 1.2, 1.4, 2.0, and 2.8. Again, this is not about which lens is better. It's more about the differences of how they render the portrait. So with that said, let's take a look at some images. All right, so on the left-hand side, we have the Noctilux. On the right-hand side, we have the Summilux. A good way to know moving forward will be contrast. The Summilux will always have more contrast, but more importantly, there's a little Easter egg in all these photos. The model is holding the lens. So that makes it significantly easier. This particular set of images, the Noctilux is shot at 1.2 and the Summilux is at 1.4, and you're gonna see the difference in contrast off the bat. Now the difference though is the Noctilux does give you that dreamy, soft glow look wide open, but that doesn't mean it's sharp. As a matter of fact, I think the Noctilux is one of the least sharp Leica lenses, and if I zoom in, it almost looks like I missed focus. As a matter of fact, I've heard a lot of Leica photographers say this lens is the most challenging to use because it's so hard to know when you are in focus because of the rendering. The Summilux is actually quite impressive because this design is from the 50s and it's rendering almost modern day sharpness wide open, which is absolutely wild. But if I zoom out, if I zoom into the bokeh, you're going to see that the Noctilux is a bit dreamier. Again, it's that soft, hazy look, less contrast, and you do have a little bit more background blur with it being at 1.2. But outside of that, the rendering actually looks, it looks pretty drastic. It's pretty different. Now let's take a look at the Noctilux at 1.4 and see if it changes anything. So here we have the Noctilux at 1.4, and there was a slight, tiny bit of contrast, but nothing crazy. You still get the same type of rendering. So let's take a look at f2.0. At f2, the Summilux gets even contrastier. The Noctilux, again, does add some contrast, but it's still just miles behind the Summilux, and you still have that soft, glowy, dreamy look on the Noctilux. Zooming in, the Summilux is looking like a modern lens. It's crazy. And the Noctilux still has that haze, and it still looks like the photo's out of focus. The background blur, what's interesting because of the aperture blades, even at f2, you still get circular bokeh balls and very pleasing bokeh. As a matter of fact, the aperture blades on these lenses are, I think, higher than the modern lenses, and it leads to just nicer bokeh when you stop down the lens. Let's take a look at f2.8 and go to another set of images. At f2.8, the Noctilux definitely sharpens up, ton more contrast, but the Summilux also does as well. So when you zoom in, the Noctilux now is starting to look like the photo's in focus. It's getting that detail, so it's rendering more information. The Summilux though, wow, this looks great. I love this lens. But from a background perspective and bokeh, because of the aperture blades, the bokeh balls are still round and it's still very pleasing even at f2.8. Let's take a look at another set of images. So for this second set of images, you're going to see the Noctilux on the left again, Summilux on the right. And the Noctilux, because of its glow and its vignetting, it almost kind of just makes the center pop a little more versus the Summilux just has more contrast. And again, these are both shot wide open, so 1.2 versus 1.4. Zooming in, the Summilux, again, contrastier, more sharpness. Interesting though, because of that, you do get more purple fringing, but the Noctilux just looks like it's out of focus. And that's just the nature of this lens. It's a dreamy, soft lens shot wide open. And taking a look at the background blur, I think they both look phenomenal. Let's actually go down to f2 and see the differences between these two images. So here we have both lenses at f2, and again, I'm still just blown away at the Summilux and how much contrast and sharpness we're getting out of a classic reissue lens. Zooming in, you're gonna see, again, Summilux looks almost like a modern lens with a touch of that character, and the Noctilux still looks slightly out of focus, that hazy, glowy look. The rendering is very different, and I can see why someone would want to go with the Noctilux because, you know, the skin tones just look softer because obviously it's not sharp, but it's more flattering for portraits. So I can see why you could use either the Noctilux or the Summilux for different reasons and how they both serve a purpose. Let's take a look at more images. Here we have an indoor image, and again, very similar rendering, right? So it's just more contrast and sharpness on the Summilux, more of that glowy look on the Noctilux, more vignetting on the Noctilux. What I actually found surprising is the background blur. Obviously 1.2 to 1.4 isn't that drastic, but I was expecting a bigger difference. And I think both lenses rendered bokeh and the background very similarly. So if you're chasing that bokeh, you'll definitely get it on the Summilux, and you get the benefit of added sharpness and not that soft, glowy, dreamy look. I am a fan of soft lenses. I love the Leica 35 steel rim, but even the steel rim does render a bit more detail than this Noctilux. This Noctilux is, I think, at another level of softness and glowiness, but I can see why someone would like it and someone would use it. Let's look at this image again. Now let's look at it at f2.8 and see the differences. So here we have both at 2.8, and again, they both really sharpen up and add contrast, stopping them down. Zooming in, The Noctilux, again, shows and renders more detail at 2.8. So I think starting at 2.8, you start getting some resemblance of detail on the Noctilux. And on the Summilux at 2.8, you're starting to get, I would say, modern rendering, which really kind of makes that lens a dual purpose lens. And we'll get to that more in a second. I also took some photos during nighttime, and I wanted to get some lights in the background to see how the bokeh looked and how it rendered. So let's take a look at those images. So here we have both lenses wide open. Again, the Noctilux on the left, Summilux on the right, and we get to see some of the differences in the bokeh. So as a matter of fact, on the Noctilux, you can see that it's more oval shaped, and on the Summilux, it's kind of confused. It doesn't know what shape it wants to be, but it's rendering the bokeh a little bit differently. Looking at the lights, they both have purple fringing, just different levels and different amounts. And looking at the image, again, we're getting more of the same. Contrast here on the Summilux, more detail, and the Noctilux, I should say, has just more dreamy, super soft look. Let's take a look at these at 2.8. At 2.8, what's really special about these lenses, because of the just high amount of aperture blades, is the bokeh still looks pretty round and circular, which is, again, surprising, because on modern lenses, you actually see the octagon shape of the aperture blades. So these old classic reissue lenses have more aperture blades and a smoother bokeh at the lower aperture. So that's pretty impressive. And you can see the rendering here, so very different. We'll take a look at one more image and then we'll wrap up our thoughts. Now here's the final image, shot wide open, Noctilux on the left, Summilux on the right, and again, you see the rendering. As a matter of fact, I think the Noctilux has a bit more distortion than the Summilux. Seeing this image here, you can just see the lines, how they kind of bow out on both lenses, but the rendering differences are just the same thing we've been seeing throughout this entire video, and the bokeh also the same. So enough of these images. Let's go ahead and wrap up my thoughts and what I think about these two lenses. Before we wrap up today's video, a quick word from today's sponsor, Owl Crown. So Owl Crown is a friend of the channel, and they made this video possible by loaning me their 51.2 Noctilux. So thank you. But on top of that, I've been using their camera straps now for almost a year. I've showed you their Trailflex flat rope camera strap, which is currently my favorite. But a few weeks ago, I was attending the Leica 100th anniversary event in Spain, and I needed a strap that was a little dressier that matched my outfit. Well, I saw this raw vintage strap on their website, and I knew it was the one. This brown is absolutely gorgeous. This strap is comfortable, it's soft, it comes in different sizes. So I've said this before, it's tall people friendly, it fit my long torso, but more importantly, it looked great. All their camera straps are handmade in the USA, and if you want to check them out, I have a discount code down below in the description. Feel free to check out Owl Crown, because they're making some incredible products. So wrapping up our thoughts, it was really fun seeing how different these lenses rendered and how they performed. I think they both have a purpose. I think the Summilux is truly special because this lens was designed in the 50s and it still holds up today, which is absolutely wild, and it goes to show you how advanced Leica was at creating lenses and optical formulas. That lens is also like a 2-in-1 lens. Wide open, it's sharp enough to give you a good image, but also has a ton of character. Stop down, it looks like a modern lens. So you really have a 2 lenses in one with the Summilux Reissue. The Noctilux is a straight character lens. You use that lens and you grab that lens to get that look. It's not for everybody, and I know some Leica shooters either love it or hate it. It kind of falls in that camp. I see the purpose and I see why it's special, and I see why some people would gravitate towards it. So, what did you guys think? Y'all saw some of the images. I'll actually include the files down below for you to download and check out so you can see the differences yourself on your computer screen and play with the different files. But outside of that, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, let's have a discussion, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good one, guys. Peace.